What's going on, everyone? It is the Derv, and today I'm taking it back to the very first piece of exotic armor I ever pulled for my Titan, which was also the very first week that I ever had a Titan. Yes, we're going to be bringing back kind of an old schoolish build with a new school field, paired with the artifact and all the perks that you can get with that, along with a fan favorite heavy exotic weapon. We're going to take our Arc Titan and we're going to do something that most Arc Titans are doing for this season, but with a little bit of old school and class to it, and that is clutch our weapons, specifically our heavy weapons, and one of our favorite supers that you can have for your Arc Titan. This build is incredibly easy to use. All the weapons are very easy to get, and you can do some ridiculous damage numbers and support your teammates and generate tons of orbs of power. So let's get it going. You guys saw the damage numbers there from the Court of Blades run. Honestly, when I made this build, full disclosure, I was just kind of bored of switching between all these different weapons. I wanted to go back to my roots of loving assault rifles as well as machine guns. Now that might be the military veteran in me, but honestly, they're just the most fun in my opinion to use. Machine guns, of course, do the most consistent, steady damage over a period of time versus burst damage. And auto rifles, I don't really know what it is. Maybe it's the balance of damage and range that you get with them, but also the handling for them tends to feel, I don't know, just a little bit better than submachine guns or maybe even certain pulse rifles. And I understand some people might say, well, you know, other pulse rifles, other hand cannons, things like that, they just handle better or they reload better or you get more bang for your buck. Believe me, I get all that, but I don't know. When I made this build, I wasn't thinking that I was going to actually make a video on it. I just wanted to do something that I thought was truly fun and, something that I haven't done in a long, long time. So anyways, so other full disclosure, it's not like anything I'm going to go over is going to be groundbreaking. Certainly there are builds like this or maybe even almost like this throughout, the YouTube universe. But for those looking for an extremely easy build, this is going to literally match up with what you're looking for. So let's get it started. Our super of choice is going to be Thunder Crash. I did do some damage testing between this as well as Fists of Havoc. Now, the key takeaway here is, do you want insta-burst damage or do you want damage spread over a given amount of time and increase super regen because you're going to be clutching your weapon damage? So for me, Thunder Crash fits the bill more because if you're dealing with airborne bosses or maybe swirly bosses, Fists of Havoc just doesn't seem to get it done. And of course, if they are airborne, I mean, how do you slam down on the ground next to an airborne boss and damage them? So Thunder Crash it is. For our abilities, we're going to be going with Rally Barricade. Of course, we're going to be sitting behind this, generating Bolt Charge, and using our weapons to discharge Lightning Strikes. I prefer the Strafe Lift, the Thunderclap, and the Flashbang Grenade. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know I prefer the Flashbang because it stuns unstoppable champions, and it also blinds targets, which means you get to mow them down faster. For aspects, we're going to go with Touch of Thunder. Not really much different than other Arc Titan builds, but with the Flashbang, it emits an additional blinding flash on bounce. Storm's Keep is our next aspect. Cast your class ability to grant a moderate amount of bolt charge, and it stacks to you and nearby allies. When behind your barricade, you and allies gain stacks of bolt charge over time, and your weapons can discharge max stacks of bolt charge. So we're going to be using some fan favorite weapons for this build. Again, like I said, nothing I'm going to go over is going to be absolutely groundbreaking or brand new. But I guess I just kind of forgot how powerful using Actium War Rig was going to be for an Arc Titan, which I guess shame on me for not thinking about that instantly when the season dropped. But hey, we didn't really know exactly what to expect with where the artifact was going to end up. For fragments, we're going to start off with Spark of Frequency, a staple in most of my Arc Titan builds. Melee hits increase your weapon reload speed and stability for a short duration, while amplified, the effects are increased and you gain increased stacks of bolt charge from all sources. Yes, that includes your weapon, which is important considering this is going to be a weapon clutching style build. Next up, we have Spark of Brilliance. Defeating a blinded target with precision damage creates a blinding explosion. The weapons we're going to be using are very easy to control, and I'm going to give you some substitutes. So if you do blind those targets with your Flashbang Grenade, you get the blinding explosion. Next up, we got the Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target or defeating a target with bolt charge creates an ionic trace. Because we are going to be clutching all of our weapons equally, so to speak, throughout most of the encounters and the activities that we run, it is important to be able to generate jolt as well as using bolt charge to your advantage to gain ionic traces. What that's going to do is it's going to refund ability energy, which in turn, of course, makes it possible to cast your class ability much more frequently. Last but not least is going to be Spark of Amplitude. Rapidly defeating targets while you are amplified creates an orb of power. Being amplified is going to be a constant with this build. These fragments aren't really any different than other Titan builds that I've released, and certainly you can make some arguments to switch it up a little bit. Some of you might be thinking, Durf, what about Spark Resistance? I would like to be more resistant to incoming damage if I'm standing behind a barricade stationary. I couldn't agree with you more. However, for whatever reason, for this build and this style of play, it just seems to fit more because I'm not running into the face of enemies per se. I'm kind of just sitting back to the side. Obviously, that would come into play more if you are going into activities where you have exploder units roaming up to you and just detonating to the sides of your barricade. Otherwise, you should be able to get your barricade back fast enough to at least shield yourself from the majority of those explosions. Other people might think, what about Spark of Discharge? Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an ionic trace. Collecting an ionic trace grants you stacks of bolt charge. This is another excellent idea, and quite honestly, you could probably fit this into any one of those that I just rattled off as my 4 top choices. But then you're going to have to main your arc weapons just a little bit more. So just kind of keep that in mind, or you might have to switch to a kinetic damage weapon, which I'm going to go over here in just a minute. For stat distribution, I recommend focusing on resilience and discipline, and then strength if you have any stats left over to distribute. The reason I'm saying resilience and discipline is because you're going to be throwing your grenade from behind your barricade fairly often, not all the time, and also getting your grenade back as fast as possible while you are sprinting around the battlefield doing different mechanics, maybe reviving your teammates and things of that nature. Having your grenade back is more important than getting your thunderclap or just your melee in general back, in my opinion. And of course, resilience is directly correlated to your class ability. So any orb of power you pick up with a 10 stack on your resilience is going to mean you're basically going to get your barricade back instantly. For weapons, what you guys saw in the intro video, I was running Rufus's Fury with Demolitionist and Hatchling. I wanted to take advantage of the artifact with Unraveling rounds, but you can swap this out for Multi-Mac with Attrition Orbs and Kinetic Tremors if you want to take advantage of certain perks in the artifact. I'll go over the artifact here after the armor like normal, but if you didn't want to run your exotic in your heavy slot, Quicksilver Storm is an absolute monster when you pair it with Actium War Rake, and I fully encourage you to try all 3 of these different weapons and figure out which ones feel better. If you don't have Rufus's Fury, switch between these 2. If you don't have, Multi-Mac, switch between these 2, or any strand weapon or that you can think of. Multi-Mac, of course, is not going to pair with the reload for Actium War Rake, so just keep that in mind. It's just a kinetic weapon that fires very fast because we want to gain stacks of bolt charge. For the energy slot, you've got 2 options, and they're both solid options, and they're relatively easy to achieve. The Guardian Games Trace Rifle with Jolting Feedback is my number 1 pick, simply because you can activate the artifact so that Trace Rifles do bonus damage to targets afflicted with debuffs that match the element of the Trace Rifle type. You can also put on Psychopomp. Psychopomp will, at least with Ambitious Assassin and Rolling Storm, give you stacks of bolt charge very rapidly. There is another one that has Envious Arsenal and Rolling Storm. Because you're going to be switching between your weapons frequently, you'll be able to fire off a Psychopomp, use both your other weapons to deal some damage, pull out your Psychopomp again, and it will load from reserves. This essentially gives it an auto-loading feature, but you got to remember to activate the mechanic of using both your other weapons. Last but not least is going to be your heavy. Thunderlord fits the bill perfectly here. Again, some of you are probably looking at this video going, wow, Durf, I can't believe you missed this. How could you not think of using Thunderlord with Storm's Keep or whatever? Trust me, I get it. Believe me, I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. But hear me out. So Thunderlord is good for a lot of different builds, and I didn't really think it was going to matter that much, but my goodness was I wrong. Again, Thunderlord is super fun to use, which is why I tried to use it in the first place. But if you were going to substitute it out because you wanted to use Quicksilver Storm, my 1000% recommendation would be Pro Memoria. The reason Pro Memoria works is you can get 35% damage buff when you activate Bait and Switch. You're going to have Reconstruction on top of the Actium War Rig exotic armor reload speed, so you'll be able to have pretty much a full mag at any given time. And not to mention, you're going to start with 164 rounds, and that's going to dwindle very, 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 very slowly because Actium, of course, is going to reload from reserve. So you theoretically could get, man, I don't even know, probably 300 rounds in before you actually have to stow it. And by that time, your Bait and Switch is completely run out. So you'll be able to proc Bait and Switch virtually infinitely with this build with Actium War Rank. So these two would be probably my go-tos. Commemoration might be a third. And I hate saying that because these two just do so much more than that. But either way, some ideas for where to run with your heavy. For your helmet, go ahead and throw on a Strand Siphon. You can also swap this out for a Kinetic Siphon if you are running a Kinetic Weapon for ad clear. Go ahead and put on 2 heavy ammo finders. The reason I'm not going to run with something like Dynamo or Ashes to Assets or whatever is this is going to be a weapons heavy build. That is a specific point of the exotic armor we are using. So I'm not as concerned about using my super more frequently than normal, but I guess if you are running strikes or nightfalls or things like that, you can swap one of these heavy ammo finders out for Dynamo. Keep in mind that since we're going to use 9 energy between these 3, you're going to have to roll with a minor mod for your initial general armor mod stat boost. For your gauntlets, we're going to roll with a Strand Loader or Kinetic Loader, depending on your situation with your ad clear weapon. Firepower, and heavy-handed. The reason we're not stacking any of these is because, again, we're not spamming our abilities. We are spamming our weapons, which kind of sounds funny to even say it like that, but we're going to be clutching our weapons to deal the most amount of damage, and we want to have the biggest effect on boss damage that we can. So the easiest way to do that is, of course, to be able to generate as much ad clear damage as possible with our unraveling rounds and things like that. Reloading faster is going to help fit the bill. However, I guess you could drop one of these and put like a bolstering detonation, or you could also put a focusing strike if you wanted your class ability back faster, but I don't really think you're going to be missing out on that. I guess you could always throw on like a Font of Vigor or a Font of Focus if you want to max out your discipline or strength with a single orb of power pickup. Of course, the penalty for all of this is that you have to put a minor general armor mod on to start. So Actium War Rig auto-loading link steadily reloads a portion of your equipped rifles or machine guns magazine from reserves, provides a moderate benefit to the airborne effectiveness stat of auto rifles and machine guns. So again, I know some people are going to look at this video and be like, wow, Durf, you really missed it on this one. What are you thinking? Well, here we go. Actium War Rig was the very first exotic piece that I ever pulled for my Titan when I created the Titan however many long months and eons ago. Years ago, etc., etc. So when I was looking through exotic pieces of armor to do builds for this season, kind of the last thing that I thought was like my first love. And I don't really know why, and I don't really have a good excuse for it, but Actium War Rig, if you love auto rifles and machine guns, I mean, bust this thing out and put it on your Arc Titan and just let's see what happens. The fact that you have Reconstruction now, and there weren't as many weapons back then that Reconstruction was even available for. So I think that's also kind of the mental block that I had when I was making this. And again, I know I'm using Thunderlord, but I don't even know if I don't think we had Pro Memoria even back then. So we didn't have a lot of different options. This was more for, there was no Reconstruction, there was no auto loading holster, or maybe there was, but maybe not on machine guns or auto rifles. So Actium War Rig kind of did the auto loading for us. The flip side to that is the fact that you can extend the duration of weapons like Pro Memoria, Rufus's Fury, or just any Strand auto rifle in general because of your unraveling rounds with the artifact buffs. And then of course you're going to be generating lightning strikes and things like that and ramping up your ability to discharge bolt charge while you're standing behind your barricade. Again, Actium War Rig, the longer I talk about it, the goofier I feel because I didn't think of this beforehand. I was just looking for something fun to do the other day. But man, does this thing put out some serious power. The only thing you got to be conscious of course, is if you're running something like, special or heavy ammo. I'm thinking Choir 1, not that you would put this with this build necessarily, but for your heavy ammo, yes, you absolutely have to be ammo conscious. Make sure you're only using it on bosses because that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And then use your general ad clear to generate heavy ammo bricks. Throw on at least 1 arc reserves to beef up the reserves that you can carry, and make sure you have 2 elemental damage resistance mods and mod it however you need to for your general armor mods. For your legs, we have some room to dabble with on this. I do recommend an absolution, an innervation, and an invigoration. That will open you up to be able to put on whatever general armor mod you want. However, if you have an armor charge, yes, we can absolutely swap one of these out for an arc weapon surge. If you're going to swap this out for an arc weapon surge, my next logical progression is to put on an insulation in place of one of these two. I'm thinking substitute invigoration for insulation and substitute absolution for arc weapon surge. The reason being is you're pretty much always going to have an armor charge, in a perfect world. If you don't, then obviously you're going to be wasting your arc weapon surge, modification. But if you can ensure that once you start your boss damage phase, you run and pick up an orb of power, get at least 1 armor charge, you can buff your damage. And of course, because it's a decaying over time, I mean, how much more damage could I have done if I had had one of these suckers equipped when I did that running? We could play the what if game all day long. I guess theoretically you could put like 3 of these on, and then, man, I can't even imagine and calculate what your Thunderlord would be doing while you're standing behind your barricade. But you get the idea. So depending on whatever activities that you're running, you may want to throw in an arc weapon surge. Depending on other activities, it may be a waste of stat space for you on your leg armor. Only you're going to know what's going to work best for you. Certainly in an onslaught, you're going to have a ton of orbs of power. Certainly in, Court of Blades, you're going to have orbs of power everywhere. And of course, when you're running with teammates, every orb of power that they create, you can pick up as well. So if you are running solo, that might be also something to consider, in and of itself. Last but not least is going to be the class item. What makes the most sense here is going to be Font of Restoration, Reaper, and Outreach. The only thing I would say is if you want to substitute Font of Restoration for maybe Powerful Attraction, since we're going to be standing behind the barricade so much, that might be a play here. But Reaper makes sense because we're going to be leaning on our weapons heavily, and Outreach makes sense because we can cast our class ability, generating us stacks of Bull Charge, and it is our lowest of the 3 stat spikes that I said to roll for. Go ahead and put on whatever general armor mod that you need, and if you have the Artifice slot, take advantage of that as well. As you can see, I would not be at a T10 Resilience without it. For the artifact, go ahead and put on whatever you feel you need in this first column. I recommend, obviously, the Overload machine guns, piercing sidearms, and the Overload trace rifles. However, if you are feeling froggy and you switch to a sniper rifle or a rocket launcher, make sure you mod this accordingly. In the second column, we're going to go with Overclock and Load, and we're going to go with Unraveling Orbs. We're going to leave off Vile Weave because there's really no chance that we're going to generate tangles, quite honestly. And if we do, it's not going to be often enough that we're really going to be able to take advantage of it. In the third column, we're going to go with Hold the Line for obvious reasons because we're using machine guns, and Dielectric for another obvious reason because we are going to increase our stacks of Bolt Charge back to us as we defeat enemies with our arc weapons, or as we defeat arc to buff targets with our weapons. Now, in this column, there's going to be some debate. Flashover is probably not what we're going to debate. However, we're going to debate Horde Shuttle. Now, Horde Shuttle, if you are going to be running a kinetic weapon, you're going to take Horde Shuttle off and you're going to put it on Elemental Siphon for increased elemental pickup generations. Thinking like Ionic Traces. The reason this is important is the only reason I have this on is because of my Strand Ad Clear weapon, the Roof's Fury. If you are using Quicksilver Storm, you might also consider using this. However, you might also make the argument to put on Vile Weave. I think the perfect substitution would be if you go with a kinetic weapon. You take this off. You can theoretically take that off too, I guess, if you really wanted to, although I don't really, probably put on beam medic just because you're using a trace rifle. And then 100% put on elemental siphon. You can boost this so that every elemental pickup that you get is going to match your super. So you're going to get bonus super energy as well. So everyone watching this video, you have some choices with this. This is not a one size fits all. And if you don't have certain weapons that I have, you don't feel like you can't make the most of this build. The only other thing that's probably not going to be debated is harsh refraction. Now, if you take off your trace rifle, again, that frees you up to, do some other things around the whole artifact itself. But in the final column, limit break is probably the smartest play here, since we're going to be periodically casting our super. We're not spamming it like in my other build. And then heavy ordnance regeneration makes the most sense because we're going to be maining a machine gun for our main damage purposes. So when you're thinking about the artifact, make sure you have your weapon choices set and they work best for you before coming in here and modifying this and running with it. Otherwise, you're going to forget that you have certain things selected in the other, over the other, and you're going to get some adverse results when you go to do some testing in the various activities that you might find yourself in. So one of the reasons I think you should try this build is for Titans. Actium War Rig was one of the first things I think a lot of people put on when it came out. It was the thing to pair with things like Thunderlord or your favorite auto rifle, and it really made the build weapon heavy. Of course, I remember back in the days where you had to pick up primary ammo. It wasn't infinite, but those days are long gone. So now it makes it even better because the ammo bricks that are dropping are only going to be for your special and your heavy ammo. Not to mention, this is just a simply fun build. You can still pierce barrier chance when you pick up your unraveling orb strand rifle rounds, and you can stun overload. So your only real negotiation is going to be what to put in the energy slot. You could also take this out and theoretically put a rocket launcher on, throw on your psychopomp, and then you're going to have all three champs covered, as long as you are dealing unraveling round damage with your strand rifle. The other reason I think this is fun is for the average player, or maybe like the semi-sweaty average player. The mechanics of a lot of these builds is sometimes daunting. There's not really any mechanic to this build. Throw your barricade down and just pull out your weapons and use them. It's literally that simple. Make sure you have ammo saved for when you deal with boss fights, and make sure you throw your barricade down in an area where you might be kind of out of damage range for the boss so that you can just keep laying waste. I'll take a few less damage ticks to generate longer lasting damage. I think that's why I was able to generate 14 million in damage on a non-arc surge activity. So had that been an arc surge, just add 25% to that. What does that come out to? I don't even know. What's 14 divided by 4? 2, 3, 3.5. 3.5, somewhere in there. 3.5-ish. So I could have been higher. I could have been at 16, 17 million. And that's just insane to think of, the amount of damage you can do with this artifact, as well as Actium War Rig and Thunderlord. And again, it's not all Thunderlords. It's not, you're using your trace rifle, you're using your super. So all these things matter. And I think that's why, you should try this build if you haven't thought of it or you haven't picked it up in a while. If you did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a Guardian out there who has forgotten about Actium War Rig like I have, or a Guardian who just wants a very simple mechanic style Titan to use that can deal serious damage numbers in some of their favorite activities, make sure you share this video with them or send them my way. Of course, as always, my goal is to help as many people as possible, even though it seems like this video just helped myself more because I was too forgetful to even remember that this exotic armor was there to pair with my new favorite Arc Titan builds. As always, I'll have a dim link in the description, and if you guys are looking for a non-toxic gaming community, feel free to hop in the Discord. It is brewing with a lot of great people. It's becoming more active every single day. I wouldn't even have a non-toxic gaming community even offer to anyone watching this video right now if it wasn't for the people in there. So again, I say this almost every video now, but they truly make it what it is. Shout out to my Discord, and shout out to anyone out there that's, been part of a toxic group before, or part of a toxic clan, or just, toxic LFG groups, and it's just looking for some place to call their own, where there's no toxicity, no drama, and people are just down to help you out with whatever. High skill, low skill, we've got a mix of everyone in there. We've got people that have, raid Sherpas. We've got people that have never done a raid or even a dungeon. It doesn't matter. We welcome everybody. So shout out to my Discord. Make sure you guys click that link if that is of any interest to you. It's open. And of course, I always bounce ideas off of people in my Discord, and you guys are going to have more ideas of when I'm going to be online, so gaming opportunities and things like that, or, partying up so we can go take on the enemies of the Traveler together are always possible. So I'm going to switch over to another little bit of highlight reel. Honestly, just watch and then go try it out for yourself. All right, let's switch over. So one of the things that I did mention that I want to reiterate is you absolutely have to be conscious of your ammo. That's why I said only use your ammo when it is absolutely necessary, or specifically on bosses. What you don't want to happen is you run out of ammo and then Actium War Rig basically becomes useless to your overall style of play. Now for Titan lovers everywhere, when you think of Bonk Titan, you don't think of a Titan that is sitting at a distance, safely behind a barricade, just unloading round after round after round endlessly from a protected source. However, this style of play is more of a blend between all three Guardian classes than anything. Titans are typically in your face. Titans are typically the infantry of the Guardian race. However, this style of play, you can absolutely take, kind of an easy break and let your other teammates draw the attention of the enemies and the bosses and the ads, while you just kind of sit back and quickly take down any enemies, bosses, or whatever in front of you safely and smartly. So hopefully you guys like this build. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.